Good morning, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Wednesday, February 26, 2025 at 11:15 in the morning. So now we're here to have committee discussion on all of the budget ads that we've heard from for the last week or so in different times, various. Anna Grace has been kind of keeping track of our discussions, and she has a document and we can start looking at that. Rick will be in at 1 o'clock to help us start putting that down on paper, but I think we can get a head start on maybe agreeing to as much as we can until lunchtime. Then we can just give that to Rick to formulate. So the first one we heard from Advanced Vermont. They're looking for $350,000 in base. It's not, if I remember right, there's nothing in the budget for Advanced Vermont. Thoughts?
Mike, can you go through what the process is going to be here? What's our final product look like that we're going to send over?
So we'll take this Advanced Vermont. It'll be depending on where the committee goes, do we support 350,000? Do we support it going in base or one time? What's our priority? The high priority, medium priority, low priority, or that's not at all, that type of thing.
So is the letter then just simply basically a list of bullet items, this request,
Yeah.
high priority, or, okay.
Are you able to pull up any of those documents from last year? Budget letter to appropriation. Yeah. I mean, not right now, but I think we'll talk, but if Anna Grace can find our budget letter from last year, we should just send it around. You can just take a look at how we put that together.
And I'm thinking about, I spent a little time last night trying to get my head wrapped around this and trying to get categories of things, because it's kind of hard for me to comment on say this one without looking at the other workforce training, workforce kinds of issues. I don't know if I want to comment on this one without trying to get a sense of the other ones too. That's all.
Well, I think as we look at everything, we should just put it in the letter.
Okay.
And if it's a priority for us, and
Okay.
we say that.
Okay.
I mean, for this one, JobLink hasn't happened yet. They were supposed to start JobLink in 2017, which is part of what is being done by my future VP and by what Advanced Vermont has been doing. And so, and now, and I think our vision back then here was that this will complement the JobLink. And it wasn't seen that way at that time by DOL.
Okay.
I think that's shifted,
Okay.
where they now see this as a extremely beneficial to JobLink. So there's last year's letter.
Yeah, so maybe if you're asking for comments, so seems like a good program. I could support it. But where it falls in terms of priority, I'm not sure until I see the whole list.
But that 350 was going to be funding another position, right? They were going to be adding someone to take this on, the sort of full-time. Oh, maybe it already says all this.
Well, this is last year.
This was last year's. All right.
Interesting. So folks want to take a look at that at lunch.
Yeah, that will be really helpful. And sorry, can I say something? I did the same as Herb, as I tried to look through all the notes, tried to think about it, bigger picture to start with. because it's same thing. How do we evaluate each thing? And at least from my perspective, I was sort of like, priorities that I see are programs or funds that help to centralize, streamline, and build systems, that can help the whole state actually, that website from Vermont would be a good example. Modest amount of money invested that can help the whole state. But at the same time, I have questions about how that's connected to, there's all these different disparate programs that I feel like there's opportunities to, I guess, streamline and systematize that more. And so I don't know enough to have those recommendations. But so one, what can we do to build statewide systems and systematize things? Number two, proven programs that if there is money available to put money into those proven programs, to me, like Working Lands would be an example. And then third, one-time, almost like catalytic infusions, which maybe the tech hub is an example of that, where it's like a chunk of money, but we think there's going to be some really bigger. And then fourth, housing, anything that helps build. I don't know, that was just sort of how I saw it, and then helped me kind of think through that a little bit. And I think my concerns and things that maybe I wouldn't support funding would have to do with like, is that happening somewhere else? Or is that really a top priority? So to me, that Advance Vermont that we were talking about first is like, I think it seems like that's something that's really valuable and that is a statewide resource that can then be utilized by a lot of different people and organizations. But I would hope that it also is really well integrated with all the other programs that are.
The way I'm looking at it, like Abby, I'm kind of looking at sort of the 40,000 view. And when I'm looking at all these things, what I see, and maybe I'm naive about this, but I see a lot of redundancy. And I see a lot of these programs all doing the same thing, and they're all drawing, they all have positions that are drawing salaries. So is there a way that we can streamline some of these programs? Can we consolidate some of them? The other aspect I'm looking at from a business perspective is what is our return on investment? And we all understand we need to invest in our state, we need to invest in our future. So what is going to give us the best return on that? What program is going to advance, it's going to bring the most money into the coffers? What program is going to, have the most bang for its buck, I guess is what I'm looking for. And thirdly, I think we need to look at the priorities. To Abby's point, I think housing is absolutely top priority. I think that without housing, that's kind of like the base of the foundation. Without housing, it doesn't matter how much workforce development we have. If they can't afford to buy a house here, if they can't afford to live here, it's not going to help. So that's kind of where I'm at when I look at these things. And, if we want to look at this first one, they've dealt with some bumps in the road. It's a great idea, but is this realistically going to get any better if we fund it?
Have to get better. Probably needs to be maintained now, right?
Right.
Question, if I may. I understand we're working with this particular fixed point in time, but how often do they look at the actual revenues and then revise their estimates for the rest of the fiscal year and do projections for the future? Monthly?
E-board.
Yeah, well, the e-board looking at all of it. I mean, remember, we're not appropriations.
Right. Yeah, I understand that.
But when the e-board, the chairs of the money committees meet with the governor monthly. Is it monthly or weekly? When we're in session, it might be, I'm not sure. But they're looking at that, constantly looking at it.
So it is worth our time, as we did last year, for example, to put such things as if another $50,000 becomes available, we recommend blah, 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 blah.
There's a waterfall at the end when the year is done. If there's existing fund, if there's funds that are left over that haven't been utilized because we've either brought more revenue in than we anticipated, then they create a waterfall and that waterfall can be translated into the budget. But, you use it, you start here and you work your way down.
And if I may make a statement, one thing I heard from any number of my constituents as I ran this year was, you got to hold the line on taxes. You got to do the best you can for that. And the proposal to do a one-time payment to reduce the upward pressure on the property tax for schools, we really need to do everything we can to maximize that, given the other constraints that we have. I realize it's a mixed bag in that regard, because there are programs that we certainly want to keep alive and not just in an iron lung. We want to actually have them be of some benefit. I realize it's a tough position, but I've heard from my folks, anything you can to keep taxes from going up too much would be appreciated. So
It's not in our statute, but we have a balanced budget every year. So that's, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and like,
But-
we're not looking at how do we put our state into debt. That's-
yeah, I understand, but
We're all on the same.
the fact that there's a balanced budget means that if we say we want all this stuff in there, that means taxes have to go up. The tax rate has to go up.
So let's pull back a little bit from all of this. This is our recommendation to appropriations. In the end, they make the choices. And in the end, we get to vote on the budget, whether or not we like it.
Right.
And so I think from our standpoint, when we look at the things that are, they've asked us to weigh in on, that we give our opinion of whether or not this is good for the state. So looking at what you said, return on investment, how is that helping bring either business in the state? How is it helping workforce? Is it helping housing? All of that stuff. Is it redundant? After everything that we've heard this last week from the various people, I think that's where we start looking at, here's one, is this some, Advanced Vermont, is that something that we believe is beneficial for our high school graduates that are looking for positions, for our adults that are looking for better opportunities and where they can go, and all of the different categories of businesses that are looking for people that and what type of talent are they looking for? So those are areas where you need to be educated in. So those are the types of things we need to look at as we look at each one. And then we just tell appropriations, we support it, we don't support it. It's a high priority, low priority. And they're going to look at all of that and they're going to use that in their wisdom to create their budget.
Yeah, and for the new folks, I think it's important to remember that what we're doing here doesn't have to be on a bell curve. Like, we don't have to have, we're just saying, do we think this is worth it? Because there may be other things in the budget that other committees are doing that we don't think are priorities. And we're just rating our priorities, and then it's up to appropriations to weed through all that, figure out what to do.
Thank you for that. Can I ask, do we have any opportunity to comment in the letter or elsewhere on the revenue side? I'm thinking specifically of the request to exempt veterans retirement benefits from taxation, which would affect the revenue side. And yet we've heard from Major General Knight that he sees workforce development advantages from making this a desirable destination financially, in addition to all the other reasons it's a destination. 4 retiring veterans who would then bring a skill set that's already in place to our workforce and might even help him fill out his 700 vacancies in the National Guard. You know, can we include stuff like that, or is this strictly responding to requests
So
to
this is
spend?
appropriations, it's not Ways and Means.
Okay,
So and Ways and Means doesn't ask us for our appropriation.
okay.
I mean, that's something that can be argued on the floor as well.
Just a new kid trying to figure things out.
So it's, as far as scope, we've heard from a lot of different people. But we haven't heard from every single organization. Do our comments get limited to only the people that have testified? Or do we have opportunity to, if maybe there's something one of us knows a little more about that maybe didn't come to the committee, but we could see a connection with workforce development or labor or something like that? Would we be able to comment on that, or are we just restricting ourselves to the organizations that came to see us?
Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to get a spreadsheet about what is in the budget. Why? But we used to be able to get a breakdown of here's the things we want you to look at. So I think, you know, things that are in the budget, like Department of Labor, they're really not asking for anything new. It's kind of maintaining. When we look at the Agency of Commerce, there were some things that they brought in. So, and then, you know, the groups that are coming in that weren't funded in the budget, they're asking us to take into consideration placing them in the budget as well. So, or they're in the budget, but they're looking for increases that, you know, the governor, I think, gave 3% increases across the board. They may be looking for more. I think we need to restrict it to those areas that we've heard from. Because, you know, I think probably each one of us can look at other pieces that they haven't come to us for. But without taking that testimony, the rest of us don't have the ability to really weigh it one way or the other. Okay.
Can I speak to the Advanced Vermont for a little bit? So it was good. It was a nice refresher for what Tom had presented to us. I recalled feeling a little surprised that some of the outreach was 1,000 people seeking career and education assistance and 500 navigators. And I wondered how much is each navigator just getting to 2 people, or how is this, you know, they have partners with the Department of Labor, AOE, and I was just finding myself wondering, there's a low bar for, did you make a positive change in your education or career planning? It seemed like a very vague way of saying yes, like I'm solidified plans. And I wasn't sure we were seeing, is it because it's new, or is it just that a website only goes so far in providing a lasting impact on your decision-making about your career? Is this the kind of thing we're supposed to be talking about? This is, this is just this, I was looking through and I'm wondering, it links to a federal resource for career preparation. Maybe that's all you need to do is take the ONET profile. But then what happens? I mean, then what happens is other relationships with human beings, I guess, are what help you inform your decision making. And is this website meant to be the unlocking those interpersonal connections? Broadly expressing some skepticism, but not outright hostility.
I mean, I think it says 100. I mean, the way I read it was 1,000 students directly to the website and 500 navigators reaching students, and then it says 120,000 users.
Unique users over 4 years. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. The data is a little.
I'm gonna take us in a little bit of a different direction. Without this website, what tool does anybody have to look at all of the opportunities in the state for continuing education? We don't have one. And so, yes, we want it to do more. Yes, we want the executive, our new Office of Workforce Expansion and Development Strategy, and we want that person to be able to take us into a direction where we have all of these other things with the personal touches, with the different things like that. But if we don't have a place where somebody can even access that information in one location, they have to start all over again. And we've been investing in this for a few years. It's doing what we've asked them to do. If we wanted to give them more money, they could get more personal contact, right? But how do we do that when we're in an incredibly tight budget situation and we're trying to integrate, we're trying to expand the government to be able to do more, right? So that we can actually get better workforce. So is this a basic building block for that? And do we need it? Maybe look at it that way.
I think we've heard from VDOL and AOE, and did they mention myfuturevt.org as a critical tool and I'm trying to think did anyone else talk about them in the time that we've been here? If it's what everybody's using, then I don't want to mess with it. The uptake is the question I sort of have and the outcomes. But if there's plenty of both, then that's good.
So it's this function of this started under VSAC,
Right.
and now it's morphed away from VSAC on its own. It's something that Department of Labor does use as well, so, and they were having conversations with Department of Labor to be put into the budget. It didn't make it in the end. But I think we've heard from Department of Labor that it is a beneficial function that will integrate once JobLink is up and running, which has been 8 years now in the making and still hasn't made it yet. So it's not throwing good money after bad money. And we've heard, not this year, but we've taken testimony in the past from guidance counselors from schools that it's been very beneficial for students and parents. VSAC as well, their counselors use it as well to inform students of what's out there. And it's not just high school students, it's adult students as well, looking for a possible career change or to upgrade their learning experiences in other areas. So that's what I can tell you about Advance Vermont.
Yeah, to E's point, what would happen if this wasn't funded?
Right.
And there would be, I think, a little gap. The difficulty, there would be a gap. It wouldn't be provided, I think. The difficulty is, geez, why doesn't DOL or ESAC, one of these larger organizations pick this up? That being said, they're not, right? So that would kind of push it into, in my mind, something they did by law. I'd, really like to see some larger organization pick it up on a more permanent basis.
From my perspective, we recommend funding it, but I think that I'll be really looking forward to seeing what the Executive Director of Workforce Development does, as terms of looking at all these resources and understanding the right, looking for duplication in life.
I'm just gonna put this through the very questions I just asked, redundancy. Is there another program that's doing this? I don't think there is. Are we getting a return on investment? From what you're telling me, it looks like the guidance counselors have given feedback that this is a very valuable tool. What's the amount of money they're asking? They're asking for $350,000, which, let's face it, in a $9 billion budget, that's not that much. It's not like they're asking for $35 million. And fourth, if we look at its future, it looks like it may eventually, once it's brought into the fold, when the software is done, then it might terminate anyway, because now that's going to be used by something else. So based on that, I would recommend that we keep it.
Think for all those reasons and things I've heard in the past, and recognizing the problem we have with students, getting students into the professions and finding their way in. I would consider this a high priority.
So I know it's taken some time to get us acclimated to where we understand what our charge is and what we need to do. But we just spent 25 minutes discussing one. So if you want to stay here late into the evening tonight, I don't have a problem with that. But I think we need to try to, all of us don't have to repeat the same thing over and over what everybody else says. I think that we can boil it down to unless we need to really discuss it, whether or not we want to fund it and at what, and what our priority is. Like this one, there's 3 questions. Do we fund it? Do we recommend it being in base? Because that's different than one-time funding. And do we fund it at what the ask is? And do we put any caveats in there like, if you can find 250,000, we'd be happy with that or something. But I think those are the things we need to think about and yeah. Number 2. So this is VZAC. This one could take a little bit longer.
I was gonna say this one.
Because there's a lot in there.
I'll start with my questions on the 802 opportunity. I have concerns about increasing to cover families up to $100,000 from maximum up to $100,000 of income. When we know this McClure Foundation grant is ending soon, which means we will need to cover more funds in the up to 75,000 amount. I think it's a fantastic program. I just have concerns about expanding it right now. And I believe the testimony we got was, we think it will help more people. And that didn't feel like quality testimony for me on how to spend more money.
I'll add to that. I remember seeing some sort of chart where the vast majority of Vermonters make $50,000 a year. And at its current level, those people will still be helped. So I think we're looking at diminishing returns if we go from up to 100.
It's 3.6 increase to base funding, but is that in the budget or is that they're asking for more?
They were also, the 3.6% increase was in the budget.
Okay.
But then they also, when they testified here, asked for about $10 million more for some other things. But the 3.6%, which included increasing the income to 100 as a threshold, was included in the budget.
There it is right there.
As was the increasing from 75 to 100,000 was also in the budget.
Right.
Right, yeah.
So that instance, the language that might be in that letter is one would support, the committee supports the governor's increase or with some modification. But I see that's.
I don't think we about where they're looking teachers to go to the program.
They would like, I didn't talk to Peter, I talked to Aaron. they'd like to.
So here's a thought that, I mean, there's a 3.6% increase in base funding to increase the forgivable loan. To the 802 opportunity to raise the cap from 75 to 100. If we decided that we would rather spend that extra money on continuing the Vermont Teacher Forgivable Loan Program, instead, we could recommend that as well.
What's the, and the issue with the household income cap increasing is, can someone restate that for me? What's the concern?
Create more people to access the free program.
Well, I mean, and we don't, and there's concerns about that, and I just was trying to recapture what the issue was. Diminishing returns, I think was a phrase, but I wasn't sure what that meant.
Do we want to spend limited resources on that? I think is.
I mean, I think it's great that, and I think it's working, and we're actually helping lower income Vermonters access college and certificate program. But at the same time, we still have a teacher shortage. It's not in the budget.
Just wondering, I could see the need, I don't know when the 75 cap was instituted. Doesn't buy as much as it used to,
A few years ago.
just a few.
Last year,
Okay.
year before.
Yeah, a couple.
What's the median?
Might have been.
22.
Since then.
Could be. It hasn't been very long. Appreciate that.
Which is. I mean, I think the median income in Vermont is about 75,000, isn't it?
Yeah, roughly that,
Roughly,
maybe a little bit more.
maybe 78.
But
Um,
If I look at our budget, the notes, it says 80K to 100, so not 75.
yeah, but that's there. That's
Okay.
the date, I think. I think that's the correct one.
Sometimes I can't type as fast as
So did you say the median was
67, 670.
67 median?
It's the median. The average household income was 89,820. Per capita income is 37,903.
And this is household income, not individual income.
Right.
The 67.
No, the,
Median household income is 67,674. That was in 21. Inflated, inflation adjusted figure. So the average is 89,820.
Can you put letter up there to see? I think it was Scott's letter. Yeah, I was just wanted to look at that again. Okay, yeah, right. So they were requesting 3.9 million was for the teacher loan forgiveness program.
yes.
So one recommendation could be that we would like to include that in the 3.6% increase in base funding. Is that your thinking, Edie?
But yeah, I don't know what the 3.6%. So that 3.6% fully fund the trades forgivable loan program. The advancement grants and the core student aid programs. And it also allows them to raise the household income for the 802 opportunity, 75 to 100. So that also. And I don't know what that amount is.
Just under $1 million. It's 980, something like that.
What's the difference in that 25,000 of raising 75,000 to 100,000? What dollar amount is that going to be that we would then?
That's what I'm saying. That was just under $1 million. Just from the 75 to 100,000.
It's just under a million.
Was just under $1 million. It was 980, 990.
So if we took that out, or if we asked for that to be allocated as part of the forgivable loan program.
Teacher forgivable loan program as opposed to mental health loan. I mean, I would make the teacher one the higher priority.
The million that you're describing would be to boost, the hope is that it boosts enrollment at Vermont State. That's what the Freedom and Unity Scholarship is specifically for students who wish to attend Vermont State University.
I don't think we've even talked about.
No, we
Yeah, we haven't talked about that yet.
I think we're talking about, we're not talking about.
It's the second, that's the second one. We're still on the first one.
Paragraph.
Yeah, that's, I thought that was the household income cap for 802 opportunity.
Yeah, but now
It's
they,
different from freedom.
That's different from the critical.
that's a new scholarship that they want to start.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
To ask the question.
So, and the slide where they talk about, okay, that's interesting. All right.
The argument for the increase in the cap to 100,000 would be to just provide a lot of stability for CCV, right? And for like really robust, like make that program more robust. Would be the argument for it. And I think we're skeptical about whether it would, how much it would really cost to do that.
It's, for me, it's less about. It's a great program. I think it's doing great things in Vermont. I think that increasing, it's a question for me about what happens when the McClure grant goes away. And we have now set ourselves in a position to cover even more because there's no money for McClure for us to take that. If we still have one more year of it, they're asking us to be thinking about it for future years and get some money in there now to help with the transition. But it's, how do we cover both? And how do we continue to cover a program? How do we continue to support a program that's doing good things when we expand it to a point that we can't afford it anymore? And is it better to expand it now and then have to contract it in a year because there isn't enough money, or to be more conservative now and not expand it? And that's where my, you know, fiscal conservative is jumping up and down.
As a quick reminder of the McClure's, they're in the year 3 of a 5-year, the year
4 or 5.
They're near 4 or 5, I'm pretty sure.
There's 2 more years left.
and it's
It's one.
I think we did hear that they layer on top of each other.
Yeah.
So what, you know, then what's gonna happen when that one goes away? It's like. You're losing that layer.
I feel generally like I want to have a better understand before putting more money into this program, it's better understanding about how all these different programs intersect, right? McClure, early college, 802 opportunities. There's all these different ways, dual enrollment, all these different ways we're fine. And then there's all the college credits available at CTEs, and every high school student in the state can take up to 2 free college classes. It's hard to evaluate it when it feels like there isn't like a coherent big picture strategy about where all the funding comes from, what the goal is, you know, I'm
sure there is. If we were the education committee.
right.
But
Good point.
I mean, for us, this is what gets workforce education.
Yeah, I get that.
But still, I mean, you're right, it's trying to understand all of the, and what are all of the dollars we have. I mean, we're almost blind here without the pieces that we really, the data that we really need. And the time, I mean, this takes a lot of time to really do a deep dive and we don't have that time.
Yeah.
So we're kind of winging it. If I had a magic wand, or, you know, we do everything.
Do it all.
It's so beneficial for Vermont. There is a return on investment.
Mhm.
And especially when we're able to keep these Vermonters here, right? Which I think when, you know, when you look at CCV and you look at Vermont State University, you know, I think the vast majority of students that graduate are staying here in Vermont, they're not leaving. So that is really a good benefit. Is Emily on or is she?
There's more detail from Patrick Leduc on the VSAT stuff. He was in last week. His testimony had a little more detail. Do we want to even talk about the Freedom and Unity new scholarship or any of that, or do we want to stick until we get an answer?
I don't know that you're gonna get any answer. I mean, this is. We gotta do, this has gotta be done today. Our time to gather more information really isn't there.
So we're comfortable with the increase for the very first, that first paragraph. Except for expanding up to 100,000, or do folks want to expand the 802 opportunity to 100,000? Right, we can be that granular.
I mean, I think in my mind, I mean,
Well, we can, I think. I mean, I'd love to see it expanded. That means we get more students in, good for everybody. And I think we can say that. At the end of this, we can also say, you know, like 5.2 million to continue, and I think when I was reading that. It was the critical occupation scholarships, which is, this is gonna take the place of, that's great. And it helps the university. And it helps get students in the door that probably wouldn't be able to get in the door without it. I think we can articulate every one of those as being needed to fund a good workforce. Then I think in the end, I mean, choices have to be made. You can give some thought on, you know, if you can find an extra 5.2 million, yeah, we think you should do this, and whatever priority that is. Problem that we've had with all of these, a lot of them, is that we started them with ARPA dollars and one-time dollars. And now it's time to evaluate them and how are they working, and then say, we think we should continue funding those because it's a good investment. And I think not hard to figure out that we're getting a return on investment. But it's still, I mean, we all gotta. There's only so much money to go around, and yeah. So, why don't we all try to, during lunch, we get an hour, let's continue to look at what is. So that we're more familiar with what we're trying to talk about. And, because otherwise this is gonna be a long, drawn out discussion. trying to get that recommendation to appropriation. Talk that we're gonna need better information next year than we got this year. So anybody want to say anything before we kick off?
Do we want to take a short lunch so we can take care of it?
No, I think we
Yeah.
need to be part of that, so he's getting the flavor of what we're talking about, so he can write the letters, so. Okay, let's go to lunch, we'll go off live, and we'll come back at 1 o'clock. We're doing Rick at 1. Do that 1 to 2, then Vita, the floor, the back, Vita, then